Hi guys, welcome to Chapter 2, Lesson 1 on line plots. What you're going to need today is your math books open to page 683 is where we're going to start. You're going to need a pencil and a pen. And you need to remember to copy everything and most importantly, be neat. So what we're going to be starting out with is we're going to be making line plots today, and then we're going to also be analyzing those line plots. Looking at our first example, it says here, students in Mr. Cotter's class were asked how many after-school activities they have. Their responses are shown in the table. Now, before you get started here, it's asking you to make a tally of marks. So what tallies are those little sticks that look like this. That's a tally, another tally, another tally, another tally. When you make your fifth tally, it goes diagonal like this. And the reason why we do that is so that it makes it a lot easier to read how many tally marks you have. Like here you can say, well, there's 5 here and another 5 here, so you've got 10, versus having to sit there and count up what I just drew there, okay? So go ahead and take a moment to make tallies of this data set right over here. So to start you off with is we have a 0, so I like to cross it off and I'm going to put a tally mark here. And then I have a 1 and I'm going to cross it off and put a tally mark there and go forth that way. So go ahead and take a moment to finish that part there. So you can see here I went ahead and finished my tally marks. Now in order to make a line plot, and you've seen these today already, what you're going to do is you're going to place an X in this example. You're going to place an X above each number for however many tallies there are in that part. So it's as if you're taking your line plot, your tally marks here and turning it sideways, and look at your 0 here. The 0 has 2 marks above it, so that's why they wrote XX. And then your 1 has 6 marks above it, so that's why we're going to go ahead and put 6 X's there, and so forth. So be sure to go ahead and finish your line plot like so. On the next page, we just went ahead and talked about how to make a line plot, or we kind of made a line plot. But one way to give a picture of data is to make a line plot. A line plot is a visual display of distribution of data values where each data value... Sorry about that, you guys. It amazes me that every time I do lessons after school, there's always an announcement. On days that I don't do lessons, there's never announcements. Okay, so moving on, a line plot is like what we just did. So what you would do is you would place an X on the numbers above how many you have of that number. Now, what it does is it shows the distribution of data values. It shows like how your numbers are distributed or passed out. For example, in this one, you'll notice that most of the numbers passed out were the 20 number of magazines sold. That was the most common there. Now, a dot plot is just like a line plot, but look, it has dots instead. So you can see how they're both similar. So you're going to see that sometimes they're going to be called dot plots, other times they're going to be called line plots. Those words or names are interchangeable. All right, so look at how to look at example 1. Now, go ahead and write steps for making a line plot, and I want you to draw an arrow pointing to step 1. It's important that you pay attention to how to do these so that you can make a line plot on your own. So here it says, Jasmine asked her class how many pets they have. The results are shown in the data table. Make a line plot of the data, then describe the data presented in the graph. So step 1 tells you to draw and label a number line. So because if you're looking over in this part right over here, our smallest number is 0, our biggest number is 4, then that's why they drew your number line there going from 0 to 4. So now if I want to sit there and do these dots, you can sit there and count up all your zeros first and count how many do I have? 1, 2, 3, 4. So therefore I would be placing 4 X's above my 0. And you kind of get the idea there. Then you could do your ones, count them out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so forth. And you can see that they went ahead and created this and finished this for you right over in this area that I just put a box around. Now, I would highly encourage you to cross your numbers off after you've used them because it's very easy to either use an extra one or not use all of them there. Now, step 3 is to describe the data. So on this one here, it says 24 students responded to the question. So on this question, I don't think we talked about this, but it says Jasmine asked her class how many pets they had. So always tell me like how many people you start out with, especially on surveys. So 24 people were asked how many pets they have. All right. So then tell me about the extreme values. Tell me about, first, I'd like to know, what's the most number of pets that people have. 2 people in her class have the most pets, which is 4 pets. So what that also means is nobody in her class has more than 4 pets. But there's also 4 people in her class that have 0 pets. The most common number of pets that people have is 2. And we know that because look at this here. That's our tallest plot there, our tallest row of X's. So we know that's the most common number of pets for the people in her class. All right, so now you guys are going to do this one on your own. So you can see that they already gave you a number line going from 0 to 5. Go ahead and take a moment to plot the points there. Once you've plotted them, I want you to then describe the data in the graph. So since this talks about how many projects members of the 4-H club have completed, tell me, like, what's the most number of projects that any person did? Tell me what's the least number of projects that people did, and then maybe tell me the most common number of projects that most people had completed as well. So go ahead and pause your video now to get this information out. All right, this is what you should have come up with, okay? So a total of 15 people were surveyed. No one brought more than 5 projects, and only one person did not bring a project at all. The most common response given was 2, which is the mode, which would be the most common number. Now, you can see here I never put my numbers on here, so let me fix that now. And there you go. So if I got something wrong, I'm sure somebody will tell me. So notice how we talked about how many total people were there, what the most number of projects how many people brought the most number of projects, which was 5, how many people brought 0. So you can kind of get the idea on this one. All right. So correct your responses in pen if you need to, if necessary. Remember, we're going to have to do a lot more writing in this chapter and actually produce our writing. All right, so let's go ahead and look at this next one here. It says you can describe a set of data using measures of center as well as measures of variability. The range of the data and any outliers are also useful in describing the data. So let's go ahead and talk about what measures of center are compared to measures of variability. So measures of center have to do with mean, median, and mode. And measures of variability have to do with median, Q1, Q3, IQR, range, and outliers. Go ahead and jot that information down so this way you always have it to reference. You always have something to reference when it's talking about these 2 different kinds of things. Measures of variability do ask you for a lot, many more things than measures of center do. All right, so let's look at this line plot here in this next example. The line plot shows the prices of cowboy hats. So you can see that they've already created the line plot here for you. It says find the median and mode of the data. Now, when I'm already using my information like this and I'm looking for my median is my middle number. So it gets a little tricky when you're doing it like this because some people like to forget. But remember, what this means is prices of cowboy hats. There's 2 types of hats that are both $30 each, okay? So keep that in mind. And if you're looking at the $50 hat range, there's 4 types of hats that they have that are each $50 each. So if I'm finding my median here, so I'm crossing off the first and the last, the next and then the next last, the next one and then the next one, the next one and the next one, next and last, next and last, next and last, which is how they end up with those two X's, which is how you have those 2 X's in the circle. So you've got 40 and 45. So you know that your median is going to be right in the middle there, okay? The mode, the most common, so I'm sorry, let's go back. The median is going to end up being right between 40 and 45, which is going to be $42.50, which is money. So that means our median is going to be $42.50 because it's money, okay? And that's our median. And then, of course, our mode is the number that shows up the most often. So $50 is the mode, which is the most common price for the majority of, which is where most hats are, not the most common price. Okay, so now it's talking to you about describing the data on this one. So start by telling me how many different cowboy hat prices you have. So you're going to count up all those X's. When you count up, there's 16 of them. So you're going to tell me there are 16 hat prices in dollars. I don't know if I'd go as far as saying in dollars, but you're going to tell me that there's 16 hat prices represented in the line plot. The median is between the 8th and the 9th pieces of data, so I would go down and basically say what the median is. The two middle numbers shown in the line plot are 40 and 45. So the median is $42.50. And then tell me what it means. And this is going to go along with what we talked about in class today, where today we talked about the box plots, about find the median and then tell me what the first half of the data means, the second half of the data means. So going back over here, so now I'm over here. So the median is $42.50. This means that half of the cowboy hats cost more than $42.50 and half costs less than $42.50. So that's kind of common sense. So if you're finding your middle price, then that means that half the middle number, half the hats cost more, half the hats cost less. The number that appears the most often, that's our mode, is 50. So the mode of the data is 50. They kind of repeated themselves there. This means that more cowboy hats cost $50 than any other price, not than any other cowboy hat. So tell me that more cowboy hats cost $50 than any other price. So you can see there's a good amount that goes into this explanation or the describing of the data, but since they already told you to find the median and the mode, you definitely want to put that information in there, and then tell me basically what it means, like what's the lower half, what's the upper half, and so forth. Now there is an outlier. I would probably indicate, in here maybe it's just put like there is one hat that does cost $75, which happens to be the outlier of our data set. All right, so now you guys try. So on this one here, it says find the range, well, not yet. So it says here, find the range and any outliers of the data. Then describe the data using them. Okay, so this goes back into what we were just doing. So you're going to be using this graph over here, so this one right here, to answer or to continue with this question right over here. So it starts with right here. It says the range of the prices is, so the biggest or the most expensive hat was that $75 hat, and the least expensive hat was a $30 hat. So therefore, they get the 45. So we know that our range is $45. And then it talks about the limits for the outlier are. Okay, so let me talk to you about the limits for the outlier. So if you remember, the limits for the outlier are found by finding the IQR, taking that and timesing it by 1.5. Then you take that number and subtract it from the first quartile, and then you take that number and add it to the, let me fix this here, to the third quartile. So if you look here, what we have is quartile 1, and I use my information from the previous screen. Quartile 1 is 35, quartile 3 is 50. So if I subtract my 50 minus 35, I get 15. So then I'm going to take my 15 and times it by my 1.5, and I found that the range or my number is 25.5. So I take my 25.5 and I'm going to subtract it from my 35. So my quartile 1 is 35, and I'm going to minus 25.5. Remember to put a decimal, a 0 here. Okay, actually it's 22.5, not 25.5. All right, so then what you're going to do is you're going to take your quartile 1 number, which was 35, and you're going to subtract it from 22.5. So you're going to add a decimal and a 0 here and subtract. And you get 12.5. That's my lower range limit, which is where that 1250 came from, right over here. And then you're going to take your quartile 3 number, which was 50, and we're going to add it to the 22.5 that we found. And then put my decimal here, and I get 72.5 on this one. And that's my upper limit. So you can see where or how we found our outliers here on this one. So this was a review because it's going to be something that you're going to need to know how to do. All right. And that's what we found here for this one. So $75 was our outlier. All right, so now it's your turn to do this problem. So it says here, the line plot shows the number of magazines each member of the student council sold. Find the median, mode, range, and any outliers of the data. Then describe the data using them. All right, you guys, so remember, you have to find the mean, mode, and range. So you don't have to find, I'm sorry, I said mean. You're not finding the mean. You're finding what it says right here. You're finding the median, the mode, the range, and any outliers, and then you're going to use that information to describe the data in a complete sentence. All right. So here you can see that we found the median was 20, the mode was 20 also, the range was 8, and there were no outliers. And I only wrote about the outliers because they actually asked about it in the question. All right, so now it's our long talk here. So you want to make sure that in your describing the data, you first start by telling me how many students total sold magazines. And if you count all the X's, you find that there's 14 total people that sold magazines. So then you need to tell me in your explanation about the median, the mode, and just at the end, just put something in about the range. And I did not include anything in the outliers. So you can see here what I wrote. So I put, there are 14 students who sold magazines. The median is 20, which means that half the students sold less than 20, and then half the students sold more than 20 magazines. So I started with that, tell what the median was, and I told about what that kind of meant, because you do need to tell me like what it means. You can't just say, hey, the mode is, the median is. Then I talked about the mode. The mode is 20, which means that the most common number of magazines sold was 20. And then I just put in there the range was 8. There's not really a whole lot to say about the range. And because there's nothing, no outlier, I didn't even include it in my explanation. So be sure to make those corrections in pen on your paper. So I see that you've made those corrections when I walk around and check your work tomorrow. All right. So this is our last example here. So you can see my little note here in the top left corner. It says here, the line plot shows the amount James deposited in his savings account each month. Describe the data, include measures of center and variability. So now on this one here, they want you to include mean, median, mode, Q1, Q3, range, all that stuff. Okay, so here what they did is, and you don't have to do this one on your own, they did this for us. So if you look at this first box here, it says the mean is, all right, so they did this. Now when it's asking you to use both measures of center and variability, you have to give me the mean, the median, and the mode. So they went ahead and just listed it. The mean is $46.67. The median is $47.50. The mode is $50. So the majority of the data are close to the measure of center. So remember when we were talking about describing the data, we described it like when we were talking about measures of center, since the middle number was $47.50 and our mean was $46.67 and our mode was 50, most of the data, with the exception of this little oddball guy here, is close to the middle of $47.50. Okay, now, measures of variability talk about giving me the range, Q1, Q3, IQR, outliers if there are any, and so forth. So you can see here they gave us the range. So they took the biggest number, which was 75, minus the smallest number, which is 35, and they got 40. They did the IQR, so Q1 was 50, and Q3 was 37. And they ended, or 37.50, excuse me, and they ended up getting $12.50 for our IQR. So then what they did was, remember, your $12.50, you have to then multiply that by $1 or 1.5 to get your limits of your outlier, okay? So in order for us to determine that the true outlier was 75, it says here that you needed to make sure you do your 1.5 on this one. So the other thing they talked about is, so half the amounts are between $37.50 and $50. Because if you notice, that's where the most of your things are, your inner quartile range, this guy right here that I'm putting bigger boxes around, okay? All right, guys. So now it's your turn to give this a try. So do this problem to figure out where you're at. They already gave you the line plot. I want you to describe the data using measures of center and variability. So on this one, you do need to find the mean, median, mode, range, and all that. So I'm going to give you a little help here. I'm going to start by giving you the mean, so it's one less thing that you guys have to work on, but you're going to have to figure out the rest on your own. And the mean for this set of data is $35. Okay, so you don't have to find the mean. Be sure to find me the median and the mode. And then, of course, you're going to have to find your Q1, Q3, your IQR, your range, and your outlier. All right, go ahead and pause your video and do this now. All right, so here you can see what the mean, median, and mode is. I have them listed. And I went ahead and listed my Q1, Q3, IQR, range, and outlier. Now remember, to find that outlier, you had to take your 15, times it by 1.5. You know you're going to get, it was the same numbers that we multiplied earlier, so you know you're going to get 2.25. And then go ahead and figure out your limits to find that your outlier was in fact $65. Now, we're not done yet because it says then to describe the data. All this is just information. I'm going to go ahead and just show you what the book has in here because it was kind of a long description. And I wouldn't necessarily put all this information in here, but here's what you got. What I definitely want to see, though, is that you're telling me that how many prices, how many prices are definitely represented. Okay, so you have to have that part there. And because it does ask for what the information is, I do want to see that you are at least listing the remainder of the numbers, like what the median is, the mode is, and so forth. But the most important here is that you include this part right here, and then it's important that you include this part from here. So you can see that this is still, what basically this is the information that we had from last chapter. We're finding the same stuff from last chapter. The difference is, you guys, is that now instead of having a data set, you are using that data set and actually making a line plot for this information. And on this example, you got your information from the line plot, and not from a plain old data set, okay? So notice that we are doing the same thing. So if you found like some difficulty in last chapter, we're reviewing a lot of it in this chapter, but it's super important you guys ask questions in class if you're still confused on how to find something. All right, so this was this example here. And lastly, what I would like for you to do is go ahead and just do guided practice question number 1 only, because it's going to take you a little bit to do, and you've got your data numbers here for this one. It wants you to include measures of center and variability, so I'm going to give you guys a little bit of help here and give you the mean for this set of numbers. Actually, I lied, but not on purpose. I'm not going to give you the mean, but don't worry about finding the mean. So I want you to go ahead and find me the median, your mode, and then you're going to find your Q1, Q3, IQR, find the overall range. If there's any outliers, which I'll tell you right now, there is not, I believe. Yes, there is an outlier. So you can kind of tell which number that is. There's only one outlier, and I think you could figure it out once you put it on your number plot to save you time from having to do that 1.5 business. But be sure to put your explanation in here. Okay, so that's what you're doing is number 1. And that's it for now, you guys, and we will see you back in class tomorrow.